Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Kartik, one of the co-founders of ETHGlobal, and I am super excited to welcome all of you to HackFS 2021. Now, you're all watching this on ethglobal.tv. So for those of you who haven't used this before, we're going to be looking at everything through we're going to be looking at everything through ETHGlobal.tv, and this is the place where you can log in, say hi to everybody else, and for the panel we're about to have today, ask any questions to our panelists, and we'll be able to relay them to all of our speakers. Also, for everybody that's going to be signing in, you will be getting a POAP NFT token for being an attendee for today's kickoff. So be sure to log in and say hi and ask away any questions that come up in the next panel. So for those of you who don't know, HackFS is run by ETHGlobal, and ETHGlobal is an organization with a very simple mission. Our goal is to onboard thousands of developers into the Web3 ecosystem. And we primarily do this by running hackathons and summits, and HackFS is no different. So to give an agenda for what the next few weeks look like, we're going to be running 2 summits as part of HackFS. Next Friday, August the 6th, will be our Builders Day summit that highlights everything that's happening in the Filecoin and the IPFS ecosystem. And on August 13th, we're going to be hosting a storage provider summit. We're going to be talking about what's happening in the ecosystem from the storage provider side for Filecoin and everything else around how to engage more into this ecosystem. But today is about the hackathon. So the goal for this kickoff is to cover a bunch of logistics for all of you who are planning on hacking. And we have a panel that's super exciting on just what the future of decentralized media looks like. And after that, we'll be covering some of the prizes that you can win as part of the hackathon. So let's jump right in. This is HackFS 2, which is happening again in 2021. We did this event for the first time about a year ago. And I'm super excited to say that we have over 600 hackers participating over the next few weeks, and they come from 61 different countries, spanning 18 different time zones. We try to map everybody on a map to see where everybody's coming from, and it just blows our mind that every time we do an event, we get such a diverse and amazing representation of so many interested people trying to get into this ecosystem. So we're super excited to be doing this thing again with everybody here, and I can't wait to dig more into how the hackathon is structured. On top of all that, we have over 70 mentors available for this entire month to help you guide and unblock you for anything that you need to get projects that you're working on fully to the finish line. And they're coming in from 22 different companies, which I'll cover and talk about shortly. And not to mention that altogether, we're going to be giving away $175,000 in prizes. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can win out of this if you are working on something cool, especially things that integrate any of the prizes from some of these projects and protocols in our ecosystem. So I'll talk about what these prizes are at the end of this call, and but to just give you a quick overview, these are some of the amazing products and protocols and services that are available for you to integrate as part of your hackathon project. So the most common question we get every time we do an event is, what can I build for this hackathon? This is not designed to be a structured event where you are solving really specific problems. So we want to make sure that you have the full creative freedom to do anything that you would like. And as we look at everything that everybody's excited about in their applications, there are really common themes that we're seeing. And we also want to make sure that we just really highlight that all these things are totally okay to do. There's obviously a lot of room for doing things with DeFi and NFTs. There's so many opportunities to look at what the future of social media and Web3 first gaming looks like. There's so many teams and attendees that are thinking about building audio and video related hacks that use decentralized storage. And if you are really interested in going deeper into the Filecoin and the IPFS ecosystem, there are a lot of opportunities and projects to pick from if you for understanding how data retrieval works and storage markets work, and just how you can make better tooling for decentralized storage. So on top of all that, we'll cover what this means and how you can actually get more directed feedback and ideas for what you can do. And we're also going to be sharing a table of all the possible ideas of hacks that everybody's contributed towards. So if you're still not sure what you can build on, you can take a look at that table and pick a handful of ideas that you can get excited about and choose to work on any of those. So let's talk about the logistics for what the next 3 weeks look like as a hackathon participant. I'm going to be covering what it means to form a team and how that works, how you can get help if you're stuck over the next few weeks. A lot of you are beginners and want to make sure that everybody has the help they need. We're going to talk about all the prizes you can win, all the talks and workshops that are happening this week and next and the weeks after. We'll also cover how judging works. And then, as I've already sort of mentioned, we are going to be hosting 2 more summits the next 2 Fridays. And we'll just kind of talk about what the summit structure looks like. So the most important piece for this event is that you are going to be doing this thing on Discord. So everybody who has RSVP'd, you would have been able to connect your Discord and get all the right permissions to see the HackFS specific channels. If you do not see a HackFS header on your Discord sidebar on the left, just like this image, make sure that either you ping us or you go back into your dashboard and connect Discord so you have all the right permissions. This is where all of our mentors, speakers, sponsors, and the rest of the 600 hackathon attendees are hanging out. And this is catered specifically to just the attendees of this event. So make sure that you are able to access all of this. These are permission channels, so not everybody will be able to see these things, but for everybody who's participating at the event, you will have access to all of this. Next up is everything that's happening this weekend for the next few weeks, whether it's a talk or a workshop or judging or even this kickoff call. All this thing is going to be sent to you as a calendar invite, so you can choose to just see everything right on your calendar. All this information is also available on the HackFS website, and we really want this thing to be as asynchronous as possible. So we'll cover everything that needs to kind of go on in making sure that we're able to accommodate as many to all time zones as possible. And as a quick reminder, the website is fs.ethglobal.com, so you can see everything from what's happening today, this week, to next week, to the rest of the month by heading over to the schedule section on the HackFS website. So how does the hackathon work? A lot of you are doing this hackathon for the first time. And on top of that, I'm sure some of you have done hackathons in person, and this is now a multi-week long online event. So there's slightly a little bit differences, but overall, everything that you understand about most hackathons remains the same. So the hackathon officially begins now. What this means is that you can start working on your projects as of today, and you can work on your projects with a team if you'd like, and a team can have up to 5 members. You also have about 2.5 weeks to submit your projects from today, and we'll then go into judging and the closing ceremonies, which highlights what came out of judging. The rules and the criteria for this particular hackathon are fairly straightforward. Everything that you're going to submit must be done during the course of the hackathon, which means from today to the next 2.5 weeks. And every submission must be related to Filecoin or IPFS. This is a fairly simple criteria for us to add here, which means that if you're doing something particularly specifically tied to the Ethereum ecosystem, whether it's DeFi or NFT or something else, you still have ample opportunities to store information to your dApp itself on a decentralized storage service like IPFS or Filecoin directly. The other big criteria that we want to just highlight is that only RSVP'd hackers are eligible to win prizes, which means that if you are working with a team, it's really important for you to ensure that everybody on your team is, in fact, registered and shows up on your team page. If they are not on your team, then if you win a prize, we will not be able to give that to the rest of your team members, and it'll only be given out to the team members listed on your dashboard. And also, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions and nuances in everything I'm going to say today and have said so far. So if you have any other questions or clarifications you need, you can always message anybody on the ETHGlobal team on Discord. So addressing the biggest question that we've gone so far, what if you're new to all of this? There are so many of you that are just dipping your toes into Web3 and specifically what's possible here for this hackathon. And we want to make sure that you have the right support needed. So we're doing a lot of things to make sure that anybody who is not sure what to hack on or how to participate in a meaningful way gets the right help. So if you don't have a team right now and you're looking to join a team, the best place to go immediately is go to find a team channel on Discord. You'll be able to see everybody else that's looking for a team. And you can chat with them and see what they're interested in or what kind of skill set they have that could be complementary to what you need or what you can contribute to an existing project, and really chat with everybody there asynchronously and follow up if you get excited about an idea or another team member. We also encourage you to introduce yourself in HackFS chat channel so you can see who the hundreds of people are from so many different parts of the world, as just participants, but also some of our sponsors and our mentors and everybody else that's involved at this event for the next few weeks. And also, because we understand that it's just not ideal to only do this thing asynchronously, we're also going to be hosting a session later today and also another one on Monday to be able to get on a call with everybody who's looking to join a team or is interested in joining a team to help find each other directly live on a call. So there's a team formation call that's happening later today. You can see the time on the ETHGlobal website, and we'll be sending the link on Discord by mentioning all hackers. So you'll be able to see that all on Discord. And of course, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, yes, it's ideal to distribute the work if you have limited time to work on a project by being on a team, but it is totally okay to hack solo, and you are not required to have a team if you wish to not be working with somebody else. So it's totally okay to do this thing on your own and use that as a learning process. But if you are interested in finding a team, we have a lot of opportunities for all of you to get to find others who are also interested. Also, there's a lot of talks and workshops happening. They cover everything from beginner to advanced content for what's possible with all of our just in this ecosystem, to IPFS and Filecoin specifically, to just everything around decentralized storage and media. So there's a lot of content there. All the talks, panels, workshops, as we mentioned, are already on the website and also on your calendar directly shared with everybody who's RSVP'd. And for all of the other questions that come up through those conversations, whether it's about talks or anything else that you are interested in, we also encourage you to check out the info center, which is linked in all of your calendar invites as well. And you can see all the details around anything from submissions to staking related questions to how the hackathon works to how to participate really well at this event. And because we know that we're doing this for so many people in different parts of the world, in case you are not able to make a talk because of time zone or other work obligation, you can always go back to the website or the ETHGlobal YouTube channel and see all these talks after they've finished. Everything is recorded and everything is also instantly available after it ends. So in case you miss something, don't worry too much. You can immediately catch up on it the second it ends. And just one more time, the website is fs.ethglobal.com, so you can see everything from schedule to upcoming information about prizes in the info center and FAQs there directly. So let's talk about check-ins. So check-ins happen once a week for the next 2 weeks. We're going to have a special edge case here where we're going to call a snapshot check-in that happens on Monday, where we're just going to ask you 2-3 basic questions around how your project is going so far. But overall, we're going to ask you how things are going once a week. And this lets us really get you the help you need to finish your project, but also if you're stuck on something or you're not sure what to do, really kind of get the direct support from one of our mentors or anybody else on the ETHGlobal team to unblock you from just being stuck. Your stake is returned if you respond to the check-ins and submit a project. So just make sure that you're able to update the check-ins once a week on your dashboard. So again, all this happens on your dashboard, and we'll be sending email reminders and also Discord pings, just updating everybody on how every week is going. I also want to quickly highlight that one thing that I just forgot to cover is that we're also going to be hosting a feedback session every week. So for those of you who are making progress on your projects, you can come live and talk to a lot of our speakers and mentors and sponsors and just partners and really demo your project real time. And get the live feedback you need to improve, or actually get help on everything that you are trying to get for that given week. So next up, we have judging. So after 2.5 weeks, when the judging deadline is near, we're going to ask you to submit a 4-minute recorded demo of what you built. This makes it easy for everybody to understand how things have gone for you for your project. It also lets us make sure that everybody's able to look at your projects from our prize selection pieces asynchronously, and also makes it easy for everybody to keep a good record of how your project submission went after the event also finishes. So this will be a video submission only requirement for all of our projects. So we really encourage you to not do this thing last minute, because it will take you some time to make sure that everything is within the time limit for each hack. And all these details, again, are going to be on your dashboard. So don't worry if you didn't have the time to write everything down right now, or you don't know how to look it up. We'll be sending constant reminders and also a lot of details over the next week and after to all hackers. And I also want to remind everybody that we do have a code of conduct as part of these events. So you can check out the rules and the code at ethglobal.com/rules. But in summary, the gist of it is that we want you to make sure that you're respectful to everybody that's participating at the event, and harassment and abuse is not tolerated in any form. If you run into a scenario where you need to report something that's not ideal, or you need to get any clarifications around either a code of conduct being violated or some rules being broken for participating at the event, you can always reach out to anybody on the ETHGlobal team over email or on Discord, and we'll be able to address your concern ASAP. So please make sure that you give the rules and the code of conduct a quick look. And finally, I want to make sure that I really take the time to point out that this is not a competition. The goal is to really highlight what is possible in the space and allow everybody to experiment. So we really want you to pace yourself, and we really don't want this thing to be exhausting for you. We really want you to have fun, and we really want you to kind of learn what's possible, get the right help, and really take the next few weeks to understand how to do something in this ecosystem, especially if you're thinking about transitioning to Web3 or building something in ETH or the Filecoin or the decentralized storage ecosystem. So really want you to have fun. Please make sure that you don't stress yourself out by doing something nonstop. Make sure you get a lot of sleep. This is why these events span multiple weeks, and really take the time to understand everything from talks and workshops to talk to everybody that's participating at this event, and hone in on the project that you want to build on in a few days. So that's all I had for the logistics, and I'm sure all of you are now excited for a few more things that I said I will cover. So the 2 more outstanding things are, we're going to talk about all the prizes that you can win and just the details for those prizes. But before we get into the prizes, we want to host a quick panel from 3 of our 3 amazing panelists here that we're going to continue the conversation from last year. So we are running a little bit ahead of schedule. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. And after that, we're going to welcome Juan, Benet, Vitalik, Buterin, and Balaji Srinivasan to do an amazing talk around just what's possible in Web3 and decentralized media and what the future of that looks like. So for those of you who are joining in, I'll encourage you all to sign in to ethglobal.tv one more time and enjoy the radio for the next few minutes. And we'll kick this off in a couple. All right. Hope you enjoyed some nice lo-fi beats. Welcome back, everybody. We are back on schedule and ready for our incredible panel that is up coming next. So I'll quickly just preface all of this as we get all of our speakers onto the live stream. And for those of you who participated at HackFS 2020 last year, we did a panel that we call just a decentralized panel on the future of social media. That is Web3 first. And we got a lot of interesting things come out of that. From a timing standpoint, it's been 12 months, just a little over 12 months since we did that last talk with all three of the same speakers. So we wanted to bring that in and do a little bit of highlight on how things have evolved, as well as talk about some new interesting things that have happened this year. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Juan, Benet, Vitalik, Buterin, and Balaji Srinivasan to turn your cameras on and say hi to our audience. We'll have each of them join us quickly. And for those of you who are joining in on ETHGlobal.tv, just a quick reminder that if you have any questions for our speakers, we'll be able to incorporate a lot of those questions in directly into the next few minutes. So feel free to log in and just ask away your questions. And as we see those questions, we'll be able to bring them on and ask them on stage. So let's see. So Balaji, Juan, Benet, and there we go. I think we're just about to get everybody here. So welcome, everybody. I'll just do a quick ask for an AV check, just so you can hear us. And there we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you?
And
all right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. So it looks like we're just running into some AV issues with Vitalik, so he'll be on in a few seconds. We're just gonna restart that session, but I'll get started without him, and we'll incorporate them in the next few seconds. So basically what I want to do is take some time and just kind of highlight what's happened so far. We're only halfway through the year, and it's already been so incredible to see just the amount of things that have happened in crypto. Kind of just rolling back a few months ago, just saw the boom of NFTs just taking over the world, from digital art to digital music. Now we have things like Stoner Cats, which we just kind of saw the likes of from Vitalik a week ago. We're seeing DAOs opening up to larger groups, whether it's projects moving into the space by kind of going from C Corps to DAOs on chain, like Uniswap or a bunch of other DeFi projects, to just on-chain voting becoming so common in every decision making that happens. Incredible amount of activity happening in the gaming world, whether it's Top Shots on Collection or Axie Infinities or Yield Guide. Amazing set of social platforms like Mirror or BigClout just popping up and just polarizing people one way or the other, or just getting people excited. And of course, everything that's happening in DeFi and scaling and infrastructure altogether. And that's just only 6 to 7 months in. We did a panel with all of you last year around just some predictions for how you thought the ecosystem would evolve. So maybe I'll just start with Juan, Benet, and Balaji until Vitalik shows up. Just what are some of your hopes of this ecosystem, and sort of just now looking in retrospect, the last 12 months have been, what have you been super delighted to see the progress of since last year?
You go first, Juan?
So, yes, sure. I mean, the last 12 months have been an amazing whirlwind, right? Like, ton of stuff has happened. Super biased here, but just 12 months ago, the Falcon Network wasn't live, and so like that has been a huge highlight for the ecosystem. Maybe it's just staggering to see the amount of storage and applications being built over that storage this quickly. Like, we're way ahead of where we sort of expected to be, and now we have all of Web3 in terms of storage. All of the applications fit in a few petabytes of storage, maybe 10 at most. And now Falcon has 8 exabytes of capacity, so that really has vaulted the network into okay, great. Like, now what areas of Web2 should we be pushing towards, and what kind of applications should we be building to shift whole things that were not possible 12 months ago that are now suddenly possible. And maybe the most crazy thing is the economic incentives of the Filecoin network let you drop the storage price down to zero, at least for the time period where the capacity build out is greater than the demand. While that's true, the block reward lets you drop the storage cost to zero or potentially negative. We could see negative pricing in storage the way that we see it in all markets, and that would be a super amazing feat to happen, because then suddenly large-scale networks, large-scale applications that have petabytes or exabytes of data storage needs could then be paid for their data, which is a super wild thing. And I sort of expect that this will happen sometime in the next few weeks, next few months. So in terms of social media, right? I think of like how much goes through a network like Twitter, and all of the attachments associated with a network like Twitter. That's a vast amount of data storage, and so like now you could actually build something like that.
Awesome. And then before Balaji answers, I'll just kind of repeat the question for Vitalik, which is just kind of having done a similar panel with all three of you about a year ago. Just kind of in retrospect, looking at the last 12 months, what have you been delighted to see the progress, the most delighted to see the progress of since last year?
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Sure. So I think, let's see, the ongoing progress of ENS is obviously really nice. NFTs just showing that any application other than DeFi can succeed, and that it is possible for blockchains to attract like constituencies other than DeFi type people. And it's obviously not the same constituency they'll be attracted by decentralized social things, but it's at least like n equals 2 is a better sample size than n equals 1. So that it's I guess a sign to be optimistic. In some ways, myself realizing that crypto Twitter is terrible is something that has made me bullish on the fact that there exists space for an alternative. Like, I think the narrative historically has been that like, hey, the existing centralized stuff like works great, and unless you're one of these either very idealistic types or very weird types that says things that get censored all the time, then like what need would you even have? But like that's no, like there's a huge just like there's all sorts of like very different reasons why someone would want something different from existing kind of centralized media, and like they even I think points to kind of similar directions for a solution.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about them. I mean, obviously over the last year, DeFi has gone vertical. A bunch of things have, been working that were not working for some time. But, for many years, I have been tweeting and thinking about decentralized media. And that's the thing that I think is, it's not like the digital gold story or the decentralized finance story go away. It's sort of like, Bitcoin kind of catalyzed, obviously, the digital gold wave that is still going on, that is still a major storyline, in a sense, this decade, with all the money printing that's happening. Decentralized finance with Ethereum catalyzed, that's going places. And, that continues. The thing is that basically once you've established your position in digital gold, and once you've got your stable coin and stuff set up. I'm not an active trader, so I'm not like, I appreciate DeFi on an intellectual level. I think it's interesting, and I think it's mathematically interesting and so on. But it's the kind of thing where if you were a hedge fund person, you'd love it more, and I like DeFi, but I don't love it because it's like, just not something that solves a problem that I cared about that much. It's as a buy and hold person. But decentralized media, I really care about. And so that's the thing where the developments over the last year, some of the stuff, for example, what ENS has done, some of the stuff actually on other chains I'm very interested in. And that's where like a lot of my head is at.
That's awesome. And maybe I think this was sort of been already answered in parts through all of your answers, but is there kind of one thing that moved way faster than you thought it would in the same time period?
Moved away in a sense of like,
just progressed way much faster than we thought.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously the rise of DeFi over the last year is one of those things where, the meme with the poking with the stick, like, go ahead go ahead and do something. And
Do something.
that's what yeah, that's what always happens with crypto, is that, it's this thing where nothing works for several years, and then it all suddenly just works at once. And if you are relying on the headlines or the news to track progress, as opposed to, like checking in with projects and being in the Discord and being on the GitHub and watching it, you would think nothing was happening, and then it just kind of suddenly goes vertical. And it's almost like, crypto is like the internet, but even more so. An exponential, if you just make it crazy enough, looks like a step function, right? And that's kind of what it is, like this, just like Tesla like acceleration, where you're like this, what's it called, infinite mode or something like that, they do when you floor the Tesla. I'm not a Tesla guy, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That's what Ethereum was in early 2017, when everybody had written it off after the DAO. I thought it was going to be years, frankly, for Ethereum to come back. I was a buy and hold investor, but congratulations, that turnaround in early 2017 from 1 bill to 30 bill, that was like a like neck snap kind of thing, right? And then, what happened this last year? I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting is that, each soar and crash down brings in like a new group of people. I'm not even sure that the soaring of this year is done. Who knows? By the end of this year, we may be at whatever 100,000 of Bitcoin or so on. Like, I'm not sure that story is done. Like, I'm not sure the cycle is over yet. We'll see what happens.
That's awesome. I was going to bring this up later at the end of the wrap up of this, but just want to just make sure that I tell everybody that today is Ethereum's birthday. It's the 6th birthday for the Ethereum protocol, and it's an amazing day. And just kind of looking back and what's happened in the past 6 years, and just slicing that every year, just the exponential growth it's had at every 12-month windows. It's incredible to see the millions of lives and just new opportunities created for so many people. So today is a fun and awesome day, and can't wait to see what the 600 plus hackers are going to build in the next few weeks that incorporate everything else in Web3. So, Vitalik, you did a talk last week at HCC around just things that are exciting outside of DeFi. That was the name of the talk, and you listed a handful of things. We're going to definitely slice a lot of those topics and focus on a lot of the decentralized media piece. But just for the people who are not able to catch that talk, would you be able to highlight some of those high-level themes and topics you talked about on what's exciting beyond just DeFi?
Sure. So a big one was decentralized social media. I think, like, to me, decentralized social media is compelling, both because, like, there is a need, like, as I had some slides there where I showed just myself tweeting my last 3 blog posts, and the responses were like, hey, when ETH, hey, you should check out Harmony $1. Hey, when Dogecoin. And it was just like, for myself personally, Twitter is just a completely useless medium for the discussion at this point, which is sad. So, like, anti-network effects are a real thing. There's also there's I think a real need for, like, a form of social media that, like, technically it doesn't have to be decentralized to achieve this, but creates an architecture other than trying to make everyone be distance one away from everyone else. And that's like, there's a lot of opportunities to innovate, right? Like, there's coming up with other kinds of structures. There's introducing incentives and, like, introducing various ways to try to just, like, optimize for getting more quality. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And decentralized social media is interesting because, like, it's a very nice playground for doing those kinds of things. It's also very friendly to the model of separating the content from the view. Right, the content is decentralized, and the content can live, could be on chain, could be on a Whisper-like network. We can debate the details, and then different people can make different views to the same content, which could just, like, allow for a lot more competition and experimentation with different views. And then like, crypto and decentralized tech is just ideal for kind of creating that credibly neutral grounds that the content can live on, that all the views can access. And the other thing that crypto provides is a very easy to use built-in layer for incentives, right? like you can have incentives for, could be posting, could be moderation, could be meta moderation, could be like there's all sorts of ways to potentially integrate incentives in. Like there's plenty of there's I'm sure lots and lots of really bad ways, but there's also some good ways as well. And like just I think realistically the only way to discover the difference between the two is probably going to be experimentation. And experimentation is something that the blockchain space does well as well. So there's a need, there's an opportunity. That opportunity seems compatible with what crypto provides. So that's one thing. Another thing is, as a short-term bridge, this concept of decentralized login, and like basically, you should be able to use your Ethereum accounts to log into things. And I think Ethereum accounts with, if we also move to smart contract wallets and add things like social recovery wallets, which I'm a well-known big fan of, then like you can create something which is both self-sovereign and I think provides a better experience than like existing Google and Twitter accounts, right? Like the usual cited advantage of centralization is, oh, if you screw up, you can always go talk to mommy and like Google or Twitter will help you. But in practice, like I've had friends that have actually like lost access to their Google or Twitter accounts, and like actually existing mommy is not very responsive. If you're rich and famous, mommy can often be responsive, but if you're not, then it can be very hard. So like social recovery, I think, can even outcompete the existing centralized providers there, which is interesting. And also like getting the adoption for these things often ends up being very network effect dependent. And the really nice thing about Ethereum accounts is that like they already have the network effects. There's already millions of people that have them. So piggybacking off of that and off of the fact that like they're not going to lose their accounts because their account already stores other like crypto tokens and DeFi things that they already care about. So that's 2. And then 3 is retroactive public goods funding. So basically, Ethereum, like I think we're already entering this transition stage from DeFi to DGov, and like talking about DAOs and how those DAOs are going to be governed. And those DAOs have big treasuries. They or at least the opportunity to get a lot of revenue. But at the same time, like figuring out how to actually spend that revenue in a both credibly neutral and non-terrible way is a hard problem for a lot of them. And so I suggested basically committing to giving out these retroactive prizes for things that the DAO recognizes as being valuable, and then essentially creating a prediction market where people can speculate on those prizes and kind of issue and trade project tokens as being this model that is worth experimentation. I think it's interesting because it kind of combines together different components that kind of cancel each other's weaknesses, right? Like decentralized voting is good at being incredibly neutral, but it's often bad at understanding what things are important ahead of time, because decentralized voting is conformist, and conformism often is not good at figuring out like what's going to be valuable in the future. And then like prediction markets are like this wonderful technique for like basically empowering people who are good at predicting the future and letting them guide decisions in the present. So combine those two together, and this seems like it's a direction that seems very, very worth experimenting with. I mean, I think there's other themes as well, and like I think the core themes are like, one is branching, the core theme is obviously branching out beyond DeFi, and I think like branching out onto just spheres of human coordination that are non-financial, and like discussion is a big part of that, and governance is the other big part of that. So like, can we make both of them better?
Coordination, the paying for retroactive funding of good works is a thing that crypto can enable now, that people have been talking about for a very long time as something that is clearly very useful and clearly necessary for many kinds of impact. And in R&D especially, you have like this world where the science and what you know so far can give you a glimpse of what is likely to be made. The market is not good at incentivizing what's very close to the science. The market is good at incentivizing the production of the actual making of products that are very close to end users that can pay for something. And so you have this chasm, this Death Valley chasm in the middle, where R&D is fairly difficult to do and pay for and so on. And historically, it's been the realm of either entrepreneurs building a new thing, and that's like a pretty difficult, hard pathway, getting way easier with time, but fairly unbreakable, or the realm of like massive tech companies that can stomach the kind of like $1 billion per year, $1 to $10 billion per year budgets for R&D, or governments with kind of like large agencies. But when you add up all of the funding scales of all of the government agencies and these large corporations and whatnot, it doesn't actually take that much money to do that kind of large scale R&D. The problem is that it's a coordination problem. And if you can do the kind of retroactive funding of R&D scalably with this and kind of pipe in the tens of billions of dollars worth of value through, you could vastly accelerate very hard work that right now is not getting done at all. So many industries are rate limited by the ability to do this kind of R&D pipeline work. And the retroactive funding thing, I think, can play a super key role. One of the things that I've been actually talking a lot about today with folks and recently is this idea about certificates of impact. So this is a concrete association of a retroactive funding scheme where people can create a certificate of having done really good work in the past, having a good impact on something. A really good articulation of it comes from the effective altruism community. Highly recommend folks to go check it out. You can make that on NFTs today. So we could have a certificate of impact market, right now, built in a few days using the NFT machinery, and then create like the larger scale retroactive funding system ever built. And that's something that maybe it's like a hack away. Like maybe one of the teams in the hackathon could go and build that thing that could have super valuable impact in the whole world. And there's a combination of kind of all of this convergence of threads on the NFT boom, plus the creation of markets around them, plus this kind of like retroactive funding algorithms, plus crypto and the ability to kind of move capital flows much more efficiently than traditional markets.
So let me offer a few points. Those are all great, actually. Maybe two complementary points. One is this kind of a little bit not exactly what you asked, Karthik, but in the ballpark. One is that regarding everything, Vitalik and I have been thinking a lot about decentralized media. Another angle on this is that we're moving from internet influencers to crypto creators. And an extremely important thing for everybody in Ethereum and then generally crypto is find your nearest influencer and get them into crypto. Find your friend and get them into crypto. Let me explain why. First is these are folks who are distribution channels that are not legacy media channels, that are individuals that you can have like a human-to-human conversation with, and you can kind of turn them on to what crypto allows. In particular, many of these influencers get either $0 or very throttled dollars from their existing platforms. YouTube gives them some money. Other platforms like Twitter, give them none. And we're already seeing that move to Substack and so on, and now to Mirror and to BitClout and other kinds of things. And so I don't think of this as a small thing. I think of this as, at least in terms of scale, the transition from, communism to capitalism in East Asia and China and what have you, like obviously there's a lot of human rights abuses that were happening there, but just at the property rights level, you didn't actually own anything in China. The teeth in your head under communism weren't actually even owned. There's this great article on this, the secret document that transformed China at npr.org from several years ago. Point being that nobody could actually own anything. They didn't have property rights in the sense of Hernando de Soto. It was essentially something where everything belonged to the collective. And that actually is the state of Facebook and Twitter and social media right now. There is no such thing as digital property rights prior to crypto. And once you actually truly own your profile and it's not really owning your data per se. That's kind of a misnomer because you could always download that. It is the ability to contact other people on platform. That messaging ability is intermediated by these hubs, these Twitters and Facebooks, and they can, as they did with Trump, they could just like remove your ability to contact others. Now, whether one agrees or not with that decision, the point is you don't have property rights on such a platform. There's no due process. And, the sort of I think thoughtless recourse to, oh, it's a private company, they can do what they want, is kind of stupid, because really it's a technological failing that something so valuable could just be seized from you arbitrarily, right? There's due process in other areas. So it's not just about property rights, it's not just about due process, it's about direct monetization for these crypto creators, because in the same way that you wouldn't rent a domain name for a primary project, you'd buy it. These people are going to move from renting effectively usernames from Twitter and Facebook and having them expropriate all the money that is going through there to having things like ENS, to having their own sovereign, kind of things, not because they're like, crazy censorship, resistant kind of people, but simply because they want to monetize without some giant corporation being able to take all of it, right? They give leverage against that giant corporation, right? So that's a crypto creator aspect. And there's like the immediate visceral monetization kind of thing. But then there's the second order, which is having creators on sides is going to be crucial in terms of having a voice to push back against silly regulations, thoughtless regulations, both in the US and abroad. And if you've got something where someone's making even $1,000 a year from accepting cryptocurrency on their website, or they have a handle where they realize, hey, I can't be deplatformed by Twitter or Facebook, then they realize that a lot of these pushes for regulation are not about consumer protection. They're about bank protection. They're about, Facebook protection and Twitter protection, right? They're not about protecting consumers. They're about protecting corporations from the depredations of disruption, right? And so once you make that argument to those influencers, you turn those internet influencers into crypto creators, that builds a defense department for our entire space. So find your nearest influencer, convert them to crypto, help them see this, get them on Mirror, or something like that. And that's kind of my advice to folks watching this.
That's amazing. I think that's first of all, that kind of covers 5 questions I had, so we can probably end this early. but no, I think what's interesting here is that Baji, what you just did is you just pointed a nuance on, like, I feel like there's so many different slices for what decentralized media means to, I guess, all of us here and just overall outside. And we're looking at a different slice or different layer of that stack. You kind of talked about what matters here is like the property rights of actually having your identity be portable. Kind of in previous talks with Vitalik and Juan, we've talked about like what matters more is just being able to be censorship resistant primarily and make sure that you don't get censored or get your content taken out from the platform you're choosing. And some of them care, and I guess like another point that you made, Vitalik, early on was just what matters more is just minimizing spam and just being able to actually facilitate a code of conduct or a better behavior or ideal behavior on these platforms. So kind of having said that, like is there any disagreement in the slicing? Like, do you all just concur with what Balaji said, or do you think there's something else to be focused on? Because I think the next set of questions are about specifically what a better alternative would look like and the properties of that alternative. But I want to make sure that we're not talking on different stacks of that layer.
Yeah, I think you'll probably find a lot of agreement. There's probably some nuance in our opinions about how things might develop and so on. Like one example that might be interesting to discuss is how can you describe a good reward mechanism for media in general, for all the different kind of roles within media, everything from kind of like fact discovery to information collation to like writing and to all of the roles of a great journalist, and then like great editing, and then great distribution. Like there's a lot of different roles that play a really critical parts in distilling what's actually true and distilling what is how do we know that that's true, and how do we propagate the news to to people broadly, and how do we kind of make the most distribute the most important things to know efficiently, and then reward that, like reward all the activity within that system well. Meaning right now, a lot of the incentive structures within media, and especially in social media, are all around kind of like just manufacturing attention. Like what Vitalik was saying earlier is like the social media networks right now just emphasize this kind of like race towards the bottom in terms of getting more attention. And so you have this is kind of why things that produce anger travel further, which will then kind of create more clicks, which will then kind of sell more ad dollars, which will then kind of drive revenues to kind of the corporations that own media establishments. So you get this incentive field that affects the entire all of the media process, with kind of like this set of perverse incentives around just kind of like attention. And so, but if you kind of, it happens all over the place, and you could start breaking it apart into component pieces. And so I think you might get like a bunch of different nuanced opinions on like how might we get there. One might do experiments now that could be done now. What could that be to kind of get us closer? So yeah, I don't know. I think we're fairly in agreement that like we have a lot of tools and potential and things that could be built now. We probably have a lot of, not exactly disagreement, but like different ideas on what might work and how you might produce a kind of like a brighter future.
Absolutely, and I think I'm sorry. I think it's one of those things where most of us are talking about the same thing. We're just repeating it because we're mostly in agreement. But we'll just kind of switch topics to go a bit more into detail. So Vitalik kind of talked about, I think, a crypto-first social network has the ability to kind of add all these incentives that kind of keep everybody aligned, as you talked about the spam problem. So could you walk us through like what a example of one of these mechanisms could be that actually helps us get to the right behavior in the system compared to like people spamming you? And more specifically, just kind of incorporating a question from the audience, like how do you feel like this type of decentralized platform would actually specifically solve like the garbage or spam post issues?
Sure. I mean, one simple thing that could probably be done is just like better anti-Sybil mechanisms, right? Like there's just a lot of these like kind of very low quality accounts, and it's just like often enough it's just bots that have lots of them, and some kind of reputation system. If I notice an account and I notice that it's low quality, that's information that should at least like somehow filter through to people who trust me. So these are kind of non-economic mechanisms, but they can still be implemented and probably should be implemented more. And they're easier to implement when the data is all on one common layer, and you can talk, and so you can just like do all of the it's easier to just do all of these different analyses on it. One kind of economic mechanism that I like is the idea of like basically scaling up a moderation panel by basically making a prediction market on it. Like if you flag something and then like you should get rewarded if it later turns out that you flagged it legitimately. And this is this is the sort of thing that like even centralized like social media has employed successfully before, right? Like I think it was Slashdot that had this concept of meta moderation, where kind of the moderations would themselves get moderated. But you could potentially use kind of Augur or Claros type kind of like escalation techniques to make that even more powerful, and like basically just scale up the power of a much smaller group to a kind of very high quality moderation effort that's low scale to a much higher scale. Another thing is just something as simple as just like requiring a deposit to create an account, or potentially just like allowing a filter that says like only look at accounts that have at least some deposit, and like if you want you could crowdfund the deposit. This is also something that Internet Forum successfully did before, like basically just make it expensive to get banned, and if you make it expensive to get banned, then the quality goes up. Like there's what other things? I mean, reputation systems could be used for a lot of things, like the concept of blue check marks on Twitter, right? Like it's basically this system of essentially social stratification that's being implemented on a platform whose CEO is a person, I think last time I checked, half of whose Twitter is is promoting Bitcoin things, and like I don't know, something that's more credibly neutral and user driven in some way would be just interesting to see, and something based on some could be reputation scoring, could be and then could be like economic for people who aren't already plugged into a network and so don't have a reputation to fall back on could be interesting to see as well. So I guess like it's some combination of like incentives, but also economic rate limiting. But like exactly what combination of those works better is something that I think we can only figure out well after experimentation, which is also why I'm very bullish on this general concept of just like content view separation, so you can have just more alternative views of the same content, and like each new experiment on doing that doesn't have to spin up its own network.
Right.
I think we need some economic structures here that can distinguish the quality work done towards achieving kind of success in the kind of in the journalism process that can't be easily bought with money from some other economy. Meaning, if you have some structure where the reward structures or the spam prevention or the filtering and all of that kind of is happening through economies where you can just go somewhere else, make a lot of money, and come into this network, and then just pay your way through all the filters, then you get a structure where it's just kind of expensive to manipulate, and you kind of can ratchet things up that way. But I would love to kind of find very good economic structures that quantify and reward the high, like the signal to noise ratio filters, meaning where you have kind of like excellent propagators of quality information, where people are being really good at filtering or recasting or connecting pieces of information, and making it much more highly effective to kind of listen to the things that those people have filtered or improved or kind of recast or added to. That I think is like the economic activity that we have to be very good at identifying and rewarding, and then giving those parties kind of influence over the system in a way that can't easily be bought. Because in fact, I think like systems that make it hard, very, very hard to buy, kind of like this good activity here, I think could be extremely successful.
I guess, do you mean, is it just a distribution of your fan base? Is that the best way to understand this, or?
No, I mean, I think we live in a world where it is fairly easy to capture, for there to be kind of like, you can't, just the same way that there's regulatory capture, there's like journalism capture in deep levels, and sometimes these are together, where like some party gains control of a country, and then you get media capture over it, right? Like the 20th century was a rife with examples of this. Like some group took control of a region, took control of the media, and then could cement their sometimes quite literally we actually cement their control over some area, and that was connected to the set of people they put in control of media establishments, right? And so I think that this is to build a drastically more resilient, freer, and accurate and good system. You need a structure that is very resistant to capture. And when it's super easy to move around vast amounts of money, you need economic structures where you just can't buy your way to manipulating the truth, or it was extremely difficult to buy your way into manipulating the truth. And so finding ways of making it.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Juan. Finish.
Yeah, just finding ways of making it extremely expensive to try and do that, or sort of think of like staking at large volumes. Any kind of manufacturer of truth.
I agree. That's good. That's a good distinction between. Okay, you go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I like this line of thinking, but I also like the other line of thinking, which says it's kind of taking it from a different approach, which is it's not free speech. We need to reduce the cost of speech. What I mean by that is the cost of speech is the cost of saying something true that gets you attacked, such that you lose your job, you lose status, you lose your position, etc. I think that is another, it's a useful frame. You can actually quantify the cost of speech, right? It is no longer the cost of buying a printing press, right? Like that was actually the bottleneck. The Unabomber in the early 90s, why did he go and send these bombs? Because he wanted to get an op-ed in the Washington Post, right? Now that kind of lunatic is on Twitter. And if the Unabomber was willing to kill people for the distribution, there's a lot of crazy people on Twitter who are certainly willing to fight you online for the distribution, right? And like the Unabomber, like their tweets may parse, they may seem moderately coherent or whatever, but they're actually, psychopaths and sociopaths, maybe not quite to the point of blowing you up, but certainly of wanting attention for their cockamamie concepts, right? And so the issue is in this kind of environment, we do have lots of crazies out there, but what the response has been basically to try to jam the whole thing in a box where, the cost of speech in the sense of you can just hit enter and tweet, that's gone down. Like the printing press, you don't need that anymore. But people have been trying to raise the cost of speech of anybody who's not in the establishment by various kinds of things where you can't say that, the coronavirus could have been a lab leak, but, when it's printed by the great and the good, then we can now all discuss it, right? It's like that FedEx ad from a while back where, everybody in the room, some guy proposes that, you send it via FedEx and everybody kind of, looks at him and then the CEO says, we should send it with FedEx, right? And it's like, I was like, whoa, great idea, and so who's saying it versus what is being said. So I think that that's an alternate take. I'm not disagreeing with you, Juan. I'm just saying an alternate take on it is reduce the cost of speech with pseudonymous publication, reduce the cost of speech with the pseudonymous economy so people can't be canceled and they can actually earn outside of these, social networks where they can be pressured into saying something false. Reduce the cost of speech with remote and with allowing people to work overseas, reduce the cost of speech by bringing new kinds of voices into the discussion as opposed to these legacy media corporations. So that's my only thing is I like to have multiple experiments in crypto. I don't disagree with your approach. I just want to put that out there as a complementary way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I definitely actually I really agree with both of those. I guess both of you. Now, Juan, what I wanted to say about economic incentives is that I think economic incentives are not a homogeneous category, and there are incentives that are very exploitable and there are incentives that are much less exploitable, right? Like one just example of this is like prediction markets, right? Like after the election last year that Biden won in early November, there were a bunch of people that were still betting and were willing to bet huge amounts of money on the fact that like the Supreme Court or whoever would somehow pull a Deus Ex Machina and turn the whole thing into a Trump victory. And I just like put hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money against him, and I made a nice $50,000 profit, right? So like that's a good mechanism where, the harder you try to manipulate and mislead, the more you're just like feeding profit to your enemy. So like that's as good as an incentive can get, right? But on the other hand, there are things where, if you just like with a Uniswap votes, there's for governance, there's literally already people trying to make private deals to pay people to vote on their proposals. So there's both extremes. On the pseudonymous economy stuff, the thing I wanted to just say is that I think it's a great point, and that I think having like good or having incentives aligned with quality requires both improving incentives that are in favor of quality, which I think are definitely not good enough now, right? Like on Twitter, the R0 of crap is definitely higher than the R0 of a lot of quality things, but then there's also decreasing the misaligned the incentives that are misaligned with quality. I actually had a bit of a run-in with this literally 24 hours ago. So I published and tweeted a link to my this blog post that I wrote about why I think the Gini index is overrated, and I think James Prestwich just like made this and other people too just like made this reply that was like, hey, haha, a guy with a lot of money makes a comment about how we shouldn't be measuring wealth inequality. And like, if you actually look at the thing I actually said, like it was that was not my point at all. Like, I actually even argued in the context of cryptocurrency, replacing an index with an index that even more explicitly tries to measure the top of the distribution. But alas, so we have this culture where, like, by default, everything you say is just like so totally is like supposed to be totally enmeshed with your identity, which just makes it like much harder to have actual decent arguments. And if we can use pseudonymity and zero knowledge proofs and similar technologies to kind of separate speech from identity while at the same time retaining the benefits of persistence, or the way in which persistent identity encourages quality with things like pseudonymity. Like, I think that's something that could be really amazing. Like, so I totally get it, even very personally.
Yeah, I mean, like, go ahead.
I completely agree with a lot of these points. I think that one of the worries, though, trouble in both directions, right? Because in one direction, you get into a world where you can diffuse access to speech and propagation of speech. You can lower the cost of speech, but then you need some mechanism by which you can gather around signal, and not just truth, but putting not just verifying that things are true, but verifying the context in which that conversation is being made. So one of the things that social media right now sets up is the kind of breakup of the mainstream conversation into a bunch of small bubbles of conversation, and that becomes way easier to just go in a bunch of directions, because you allow a lot more contrarian thinking, a lot more exploration of new ideas, a lot of exploration of what might be possible. You make it harder for the mainstream to control opinion and so on. And so it makes it harder to kind of like take over opinion and whatnot. On the flip side, it also creates an environment where it is way easier to manipulate conversations and way easier to manipulate belief. And so you have right now, with the internet already today, it's kind of like even though there is way faster diffusion of knowledge, way more access to all information that humanity has ever assembled, way higher quality distillations of that information, way more direct access across people in a real-time fashion to every expert on the planet on every field that you can think of. Like, you could talk to them that day if you really needed to through Twitter or things like that. However, the conversation are so diffused and so kind of there's so many battlegrounds drawn on so many different kind of memes that you're in an administration where people are going into various different bubbles, and in this period you have a rise of way more information manipulation and like the belief in all kinds of things that are very trivially easily proven false, and so you have like this simultaneous thing of making it easier to explore the non-mainstream ideas, also paying the cost of like eating the fact that is going to cause a huge diffusion into many more ideas that are many times like also super dangerous, right? Like we're living it through right now. Like the anti-vaxxer meme complex is extremely powerful and growing a lot. And every country, I've been traveling for a few weeks, and all the countries that I've visited so far, their anti-vaxxer population is increasing dramatically, and it's even through the last pandemic. And so it's one of those bizarre pieces of reality right now, where while we're all connected, while we have access to all the facts and knowledge, you still have like information manipulation being so easy to do now, that the facts could be staring people in the face, and we just don't have like the right epistemology for people to kind of understand how to process those facts, how to process that information, how to get to know what's true. And I think like solving that problem is a very non-trivial thing, and we don't have a good set of structures. So maybe a question for the groups, like how do we solve that?
Well, I actually have a talk on that coming. I can preview if you're very interested, but basically like rebuilding our information supply chain. And, one thing, by the way, I think that's really important is to distinguish between, social consensus versus truth, because they're not the same, but often we'll say, oh, that is true because there was a social consensus. And in fact, I think you can sort of position facts at two poles. Like there's the political facts and the technical facts, right? So political fact is something that's true if enough other people believe it to be true. For example, who is the president, or where is the border of a country, or what is the value of this good, right? That's actually like a psychological phenomenon. If you can install software to enough people's brains, you can change the value of these variables, right? There's social consensus. Then on the other side, there's things that are purely technical, like what is the result of this equation, or what is the diameter of the coronavirus under an electron microscope, or what is the value of the permittivity of free space. Those are physical constants where it does not matter what people think. That's not something where installing software in people's brains changes the outcome. Those are physical facts that are independent of any human being, and an alien would come to the same conclusions, right? And then what's interesting is what cryptocurrency has done is it's actually taken things that were previously purely in the realm of politics, like the O'Brien style 1984, where if you can beat enough people, you can change it. And it started to anchor them with technical facts, like, the value of this equation determines the value of this currency. You sort of pull it back over here so the matting crowd can't just flip on a dime and be like, oh, it's a lab leak, it's not the lab leak. Oh, we value this. It puts at least some friction there, right? You're using the social consensus is around a mathematical fact that can't just change instantaneously, right? So it's a degree of mob resistance, a degree of intentional friction in the equation, right? And so to me, prediction market style bets, I am somewhat, Vitalik, I know you won money on it, but, if, for example, just take a historical example, your prediction market was, okay, who's going to be adjudicated the guys who committed the mass murder with Katyn Forest, right? Which you may be familiar with, right? That was something where the Soviets blamed it on the Nazis, and everybody thought it was the Nazis who did this murder of Polish officials during World War II. But after the Soviet Union fell, the archives revealed it was actually the Soviet Union, right? And that's like an example, this maybe in a barren historical example, but it's actually maybe not so much because there's this great book, by the way, you should read called The Gray Lady Winked. I actually put it up there with The Sovereign Individual. It just came out a few months ago, which shows that we've been constantly gaslighted by the New York Times Company and by these other institutions. And it's not just that they sort of wrote themselves out of causing the Iraq war with false information, or wrote themselves out of messing up COVID with false information at the beginning. They wrote themselves out of all of these other historical episodes where they never actually did have a good informational track record. They printed Nazi propaganda verbatim, Soviet propaganda verbatim, Castro's propaganda verbatim. All of these historical episodes, they basically just were on really the wrong side. And then because they had control of the microphone, later they could kind of rewrite that, right? And so the extent of it, it's like you kind of realize when you go back into the archives and you actually look and you compare what they actually said to what they said, you're like, oh, that doesn't add up, right? So we have a huge problem for every area where social consensus determines truth that's much, much deeper than people think. Yeah, so the book is called The Gray Lady Winked. It's by, here, let me see if I can, oops.
We'll get that up to everybody else.
Yeah, why don't you put that on screen or something?
Yeah.
10 of 10 recommendation. The reason everybody in crypto should read it is the reason I put it up there with The Sovereign Individual is, what is crypto about at the most fundamental level? It is about Nakamoto consensus and decentralized truth, right? That's what started the whole thing, is how to arrive at, objective fact in the event of adversaries trying to muck all that up, right? And everything else, proof of stake, and so on. Obviously, I'm a fan of all of that, but all that kind of stems from that seminal moment, right? And so this decentralized cryptographic truth is our one shield against centralized falsehood by corporations and states, And so this book is so important because it kind of shows the depth of that degree of falsification where, the Soviet regime has collapsed, the Nazi regime has collapsed. So we know all the things that they falsified and they lied about, but we're still kind of in the middle of this one. And, what I think the next big one is going to be is inflation, right? We're already kind of in the middle of that, where we're going to be first told it's not happening, that's starting to shift to it's a good thing, and actually prices are down. Take a look at the CPI, which conveniently excludes a bunch of things from the market basket, like the big ticket items like healthcare and education and so on. Pay no attention to those, citizen. And then inflation will be, after it's denied, it'll be marketed as good because it wipes out all your debts after all, and only the rich really stand to lose. Only people with a positive net worth benefit from, not having inflation. All your debts are going to go away. Isn't that good? And then it's going to turn to what happened in Argentina and Venezuela and what have you in a particular sense, which is inflation is a social phenomenon. So if you talk about inflation, you're causing it because you're causing other people to believe prices are going up. So therefore, talking about it, it's actually kind of a thought crime, and it's irresponsible to do that, right? And I know that sounds paranoid, but that's exactly what has happened if you go and read, the history books. And not even the history, because the present books, right? You talk to Venezuelans, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. Now, is it going to play out exactly like Venezuela? Who the heck knows? I do know that this decade is going to be a crazy collision between, I think, Bitcoin maximalists and the state and so on. And I'm not looking forward to that. But I do think that whatever we do need to have decentralized sources of truth. We need to have shadow statistics that are not simply guys in their basement making things up. It's very important. Like the establishment tries to portray deviations from the consensus as being QAnon, as opposed to Satoshi-anon, which is pseudonymous and above the establishment as opposed to below, right? And that upward deviation, there's anti-vax, but there's also the folks who saw coronavirus before the mainstream press did, and that's like they're for the most part pro-vax, right? And so we have to be here. We have to have a better set of facts in the establishment. We have to have pseudonymous publication. We have to be here and completely resist both this and the branding of being, deviation and below. It's like contrarian but right, if that makes any sense. There's more I can say on actually. We'd go after the inflation service, but let me give the mic to somebody else for now.
No, on the contrarian but right perspective, like that's exactly the area that where we need this most, right? So it's the problem is right now so far human systems are pretty bad at figuring out those when things are contrarian but right. If you get the closer you are to physics, the easier it is, basically, because you can run experiments and test it. Or the closer you are to math, so math and physics are fairly easy. As soon as you get away from that, it gets harder and harder and harder. And you enter much more into intersubjective realities that you're talking about in terms of.
Okay, so let me talk about that for a second. Let me talk about it for a second, because actually I have a spiel here, and I'll put out a talk, and you guys can shoot down, critique it, right? Yep. So basically, right now we have this huge problem where people are like, oh, you don't agree with science, huh? And the thing is, what they're doing, there's a difference between science and quote unquote science. What's happening is people are stealing the prestige of Maxwell's equations for some shitty data analysis. Okay. And so some study that came out last week, because it's the form of science, it's got the authors and the affiliations with the superscripts, all that stuff that I did in grad school, you did in grad school, Juan, all of that kind of thing. It's got the form of science. So it's science. This came out in Nature or Science or PNAS or whatever, right? But the thing is, the number of independent replications of that study is 1 trillionth of Maxwell's equations, less than 1 trillion, right? Every single time, what we're doing right now is an independent replication of Maxwell's equations, right? If we were wrong about how the E and B field evolved with time, this wouldn't work, right? And we're replicating various results in quantum mechanics. All these different things have to work in an extremely consistent way for us to even have this conversation, right? And so those are scientific results that deserve the prestige of capital S science. But some study that came out last week, which doesn't have a public data set, which often doesn't have the code to generate that data set, and which often the PDF is behind a paywall, simply is not on the same scale when you measure it on the right scale, which is number of independent replications. Now, the thing is, what people will then say is, okay, what are you saying, Balaji, that everybody's supposed to go and replicate every study in their home? We're supposed to build like a chemical vat and a cloud chamber, an inclined plane, all this apparatus here? I'm like, well, maybe, but I will give you something else, which is, yes, independent people, we don't all have, most people don't have these scientific apparatus in your house, but what you do have? You have these things, right? You have these computers, right? These phones, these laptops, these very powerful computers. And so everything that is computational, you can replicate locally. Now, there's actually a concept here in science called reproducible research. And the idea is that just like you template a website from a database, you template a PDF from the code and data. And so you release the data and the code where you can hit enter and rebuild a PDF, right?
Yeah.
So this concept is reproducible research. It's been out there for 20 years. One concept I have is truly reproducible research, where a service like IPFS or Filecoin, could be used to host that data and that code and that paper. And now what you get is actually a citation graph where you're not simply citing a past paper, you're importing it. And the process of importing it actually has an implicit replication in it, in the same way that when you git clone something and run it, you're effectively replicating that result. It is engineering, not science, right? Now, Vitalik, you okay? Oh, okay. So the point basically is that this is something where, yes, you are still separating it into that which was reported. The code and the data are the only thing that the average Joe can kind of download and muck around with. But that alone is often enough, because you can add up columns and rows. You can see if things are internally consistent. You can run Benford's law type tests to see if the stats have weird digits. There's all kinds of tests that you can at least see to see if the thing is internally consistent, number one. And then number two, if you want to go further, for example, in sequencing analysis, anytime you're doing anything with real data, you'll find so-called batch effects, right? Where you run the exact same experiment on this instrument and this instrument, and there's like slight differences in levels of the illumination and so on, just due to batches. And so what we do with that is we record the instrument number along with it, and you do a regression to pull out instrument level variation before you do any further analysis. Point being, it's very easy to imagine crypto instruments that then take out the human step. So the data is just streamed on chain and it's digitally signed, and you have the full chain of custody for the data, where you'd actually have to mess with the actual instrument itself when the data was being recorded. Now, what I'm describing is something where on-chain capacity vastly increases, but I know, Juan, you're working on that.
Yeah.
We've got the code piece here with Ethereum. We got the data piece here with Filecoin. Put them together, we're going to get crypto science, and we get crypto
incentives to help facilitate all that bootstrapping.
Yeah, that's right.
There are a lot of things happening. There are a lot of things happening right now that are precisely what you're describing, Najee. Like the instrumentation, software stacks that are connected to the instruments, putting it into the kind of reproducible set of experimentation that you're describing. I think, yeah, it's a pretty bright future. There's a lot of possibilities. A lot of people are working on this stuff. Probably not enough. So I think when I look at a lot of these projects, what they're really limited on is people more than capital or ideas or things like that. So we need more people working on these things. So it thought out to all the hackers here, if you're into science and into looking for interesting projects. This area, what Raj is describing, of kind of like getting into much more higher quality reproducible research is exactly a great one, and it connects in 100% to the epistemology question and to the figuring out what's true question, because we need to turn our collective gathering of information across the planet into a process where you can connect every fact that you hear to the chain of provenance of exactly how we know what we know, and how sure are we. And when some result happens invariably later on that falsifies some prior results, as sometimes happens, we can model that, and we can then cascade the overturning of that fact to understand what else should we be worried about now, and so on. Like there's been multiple crises in biology, for example, where certain results got overturned and then called into question. Tons of science, and including some medication, where like people had been treated with a bunch of medicine that got overturned later. So that's I think a lot of really good possibilities here. A lot of hard incentive design and a lot of tool building that needs to happen. I think it would be pretty interesting to see experimentations on this connecting of the provenance of scientific data to epistemology in decentralized media. So for example, could you build social media where you use the latest in NLP, which is actually really good, to distill out what is being said and connect it to what we know so far? So there's a lot of pieces that people need to build to be able to enable that, but a lot of the component systems are there. You can nowadays generate a pretty good graph, concept graph of what a tweet might say or what a blog post might be saying, might be implying, and you can connect that to a lot of the facts that we know in kind of the scientific graph of knowledge, and you can connect it to the specific papers and experiments and so on that have shown that have told us or give us evidence for that fact being true. And that would be an amazingly interesting experiment to build, like interesting product to build. Like what happens when you start annotating the media that people are describing with the connectivity to the graph of what we know is true and how we know it's true, how we know it is true. So I think that kind of stuff might be super interesting too.
I was going to say this might be the easiest moderation job I've ever done because you guys are just at it, just having the best conversation without any direct prompts. But I do want to just ask one question from the audience, and I think it goes back to a point that Balaji pointed out on the pseudonymity or the cost of speech sort of theme here, which is just in that world, does that mean that you end up actually having more spam or just kind of BS because now people can just say whatever they want and have that tied to just not a lot of consequences?
What I think you really need.
How do you moderate that?
Yeah. So I think right now what we have, and we're going to look back on this as like, a disaster, but essentially what happened was what we have are things like Twitter, which are just public war zones, right? They're like a combination of a library and Liberia. Liberia, was in like the middle of a civil war for many years, right? And, the thing is that, you have folks who are there to learn and you have folks who are there to fight, right? And fighting gets engagement, and fighting is kind of a low IQ thing you can do. How many times, I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience, but any post that you put up that has an equation, it's like garlic to trolls. It basically just repels them because they're like, I don't understand this, right? I kind of want, like, every time I type water to substitute with dihydrogen monoxide as a sort of a troll repellent or something like that, right? But rather than try to do that sort of verbally and erect these sort of impromptu defenses, that's kind of like wearing a mask when you go outside. You might have to do that when the state has failed, but ideally what you want is a collective that prevents the virus from even getting there in the first place. So I think the next generation of social networks will not be these giant assemblies of people who have nothing in common besides a desire to get as many likes as possible that day. But instead, they'll actually be cryptographically moderated networks with purpose, basically proto-nations. And I think that's a huge thing of the future. Basically what we're about to see, we're starting to see this with BitCloud and, with actually what some stuff that Twitter is doing with Bitcoin. I think we're starting to transition from just mere social networks to social networks plus cryptocurrency equals network nationalism. That is to say, you don't really care if somebody joins Instagram, but if you're a holder of crypto Instagram, you do care. Suddenly you're recruiting for it in the same way that you're recruiting for a cryptocurrency. And so the point is that these network nations will have not just their own cryptocurrencies, and their own values, but their own standards for what is true and not true, and so on and so forth. And ideally, there's at least one that is run by rational scientists and engineers, and that is essentially the filtering, like if you centrifuge something, right, you get all of these different layers out. Like there is that supernatant, right? That this is the thing that floats to the top. There should be at least one of those subnetworks that is genuinely rational, that knows when to fight when attacked, but that is not like a first strike kind of, character, that is rational enough to entertain new things, but not so empty-headed that, all kinds of woo and crystal stuff is taken on board. And what I'm describing is, I think, where we stand. Of course, that may be self-serving, but I'd like to think that's where we stand, where you can tell the difference between, let's say, early cryptocurrency versus a get-rich-quick scheme. One has technical substance, one does not. Same with longevity. There's actually technical substance there. It's not simply charlatans peddling a fountain of youth, but there's actually data and science there, right? So I think the answer here is we actually need to have groups, social networks, sort of like what ETH research is in some ways, sort of like what, Zcash has their forum, Filecoin has its forum. We've built these kinds of things in smaller groups. What we haven't done is actually take the torch and say, look, we're going to actually enforce civil discourse here. We're going to have physical levels of civility. We're not going to have the free-for-all of Twitter. If you want that, Twitter's right there. Go and knock yourself out. This is actually something which is more like a house or more like a community where we're actually trying to seek truth. And I think that's likely to be the way that we do it. And we're going to need to use cryptocurrency to align the incentives to build a defense there, right? To build essentially an online Athens of a kind, right? That's how I think about it. I'm open to your thoughts.
So just like for Vitalik, maybe kind of similar line to that same question, which is just understanding, like, okay, if you have this as a premise, does that mean Well, not does. I mean, to my understanding, this creates more of these sub-communities and fragments kind of groups to self-associate with the similar types of groups. And like, there are definitely negative effects to that type of behavior. I feel like Twitter, even though you have celebrities and doctors at the same time, like they can still have a discourse, but do you kind of prevent fragmentation in these worlds? Or
Yes,
is that
but here's the thing. 1950 was like peak homogenization, right? You had one telephone company, AT&T, and two superpowers, the US and USSR, and three television stations, ABC, CBS, NBC, right? And it was the 20th century was the age of these gigastates, right? The US and the USSR, but also the PRC and so on and so forth, right? And as you go forward and backward in time, forward to like 1991 and backward to 1890, you actually start decentralizing. That was like a super centralized moment. You go forward in time, you get cable TV and then the internet. Backwards in time, you start to have, the robber barons that got, crushed by FDR and Teddy Roosevelt, and you have the closing of the American frontier in 1890. And in many ways, our future is our past, where we're kind of having, the tech barons are like the robber barons, or the cryptocurrency are like the era of private banking. The coronavirus is like the Spanish flu. Socialists and nationalists fighting in the streets is like Weimar. The inflation is like Weimar, and so on and so forth, right? We're kind of replaying in sort of a kaleidoscopic way pieces of our past, because I believe the fundamental driver is that the strength of the centralized state is kind of weakening, at least in the West. And so, another way of thinking about this is absolutely the I Love Lucy days are on their way out, where everybody gathered in front of a TV and they all just kind of watch the same thing, right? We have all these channels, but that's actually a rediscovery of all of this intellectual diversity that existed before that homogenizing moment of the mid-20th century, right? So in a sense, we're actually going back to the future if you take the long enough view. Many different schools of thought, many different kinds of traditions were wiped out by these gigastates of the 20th century. Now we're sort of, having that flourish again. And yeah, some of them are bad, but some of them are really good. And so we're going to have deviation upward and deviation downward, because that's what the internet does. The internet increases variance in everything by removing the middleman, removing the moderator, removing the mediator, removing the medium, which are both good and bad things. It just increases variance in everything. You get more upside and more downside. So we just lean into that. We want to amplify the upside.
Yeah, and I think I'd definitely say a very similar thing, which is that I definitely don't think that it's true as a blanket statement that fragmentation is bad. Like, often fragmentation can be good, right? Like, I think there might have even been, like, I don't remember the exact details, but studies where, like, if you do the thing where you get a bunch of people to like vote on how many balls are in a jar, and like the results are more accurate. The results are more accurate if they if you ask people independently, they don't see each other's answers, right? Like, fragmentation just is intellectual diversity. It allows different groups of people to focus on specific things and make focused efforts to figure out specific things, like even if the larger environment doesn't understand what they're doing at first, right? Like longevity research, the fact that that's just like a bubble that managed to happen despite almost everyone in the world not caring about it for so long. Caring about existential risks like AI risk, that was also the result of a rationalist and kind of effective altruist philosopher bubble. I think it's not so much fragmentation versus being worse than no fragmentation. It's that like there is fragmentation, and the question is, are the fragments going to have positive sum or negative sum interactions with each other? And like status quo social media definitely creates lots of ways for fragments to have very negative sum interactions with each other, right? And I like the problem is basically that, like, one way to think about this is that the selection function that's operating on these fragments is one that basically is this kind of internet warfare, and internet warfare does not at all obviously corresponds to quality of an idea. The like part of what I think people might be seeing is that internet warfare is an even worse selection function than like highly civilized long form debate, and that's where like you can get this kind of reduction in quality from like basically print media to Twittering. But like a selection function that's even better is just the ability to like actually build something, and to have a fragment that actually creates something of value, right? And like some fragments can, and lots of other fragments can't.
I think that's a really well put decision framework.
I think we agree on a lot of this. I think that thing I will say about fragmentation is that it's extremely critical to be able to fragment and be able to fork, be able to go and create these different communities and so on. And at the same time, we are in a larger integrated system, and so the actions of one fragment are not isolatable from all other fragments, and so there is some amount of connectivity and or some amount of like shared fates. We're entering into a century where the capabilities of technology are so tremendously powerful, and the cost of using the technology is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where it's going to be super tricky and dangerous to allow a lot of fragmentation if we don't immediately, as fast as we can, connect it to a very good way of testing what's true. The fragmentation will lead to vast amounts of manipulation, way worse than what we see now. And remember that the gigastates that you referenced formed out of like the easy to take over fragmented states of before. And so in a world where it's just dramatically easier for small groups to coerce and manipulate like large amounts of those fragments by kind of like poisoning the mimetic complexes, we're going to need that appeal to good epistemology across the system. So yeah, I'll leave that with to the HackFS hackers. Figure out good ways of connecting us to reality. Figure out good ways of making sure that that in all our decentralized, small, fragmented webs of information that we're kind of building for ourselves, in all our bubbles, we can still reasonably quickly distill and connect what we're saying to reality. Because if we don't do that, we're going to enter into like a world of into worlds of fiction unlike what we'd have ever seen before, and those are super easy to take over. So just yeah, fair warning.
It's not the metaverse I'm excited about. I'll end this off with one last question for all of you. If you were a hacker at HackFS and you had the next 3 weeks to build something cool in any category that we either talked about or didn't talk about, what would you either build yourself or tell others to build? You can start this off with Balaji.
Well, go and subscribe to 1729.com because we're actually going to put out a prize for a decentralized inflation dashboard. I actually think that's going to unite the clans because it, validates the BTC worldview, which I, in many ways subscribe to, that inflation is coming and the state is going to print tons of money. It validates the ETH worldview that dapps are important. It validates like, crypto oracles. It's basically a stress test of our entire infrastructure to just get a few numbers on chain in such a way that everybody can see them. And I think it could be like the next CoinMarketCap, where globally this dashboard just gets refreshed constantly. Most people don't know this, but CoinMarketCap.com passed WSJ.com several years ago in terms of traffic, actually, because it's like the global financial dashboard. Who cares about the public stocks anymore? It's all crypto. And so this inflation dashboard, the critical thing is to have a really good information supply chain that is auditable and better than CPI, because you can't just be like, oh, the vegetables at my store are more expensive, or whatever, because that can be dismissed as anecdotal evidence. You need to basically out PhD the PhDs and do so pseudonymously. You have to be like Satoshi level. But I think that something like that done well will kind of unite the clans and be a very important thing for us to build. It's like a true application that millions of people around the world will have to use. It also brings people into crypto in several different ways, buying Bitcoin, using Ethereum, using, maybe Filecoin and other things to store the data sets required to build those inflation dashboards and so on. So that's something that go to 1729.com. We're going to send out a prize on that pretty soon.
Juan, I think you wanted to say a few things.
Yeah, I would say just what we were talking about earlier, I would say certificates of impact are now, you can now make them as NFTs and they could be super valuable. So go make those. This kind of collecting the chain of verifiability of information. So create NFTs out of, go look into the science NFTs and create NFTs out of every single scientific artifact, everything from an experiment to a figure to like the data sets to the papers to all of that. Maybe funding mechanisms around that. So use SourceGrid or split streams to flow rewards back to and funding structures back through the scientific graph, and then hacks around being able to kind of like connect all of that information flow with so appealing to kind of like the social media type aspect of things, ways of elevating our conversation, whether it's in short form things like Twitter or longer form things like blog posts or news articles or books, or you can pick any kind of media size you most appeals to you and find ways of connecting the what is being said to what we know so far is true and why and how, make that evidence chain like super clear. So hacks around that.
Awesome. And lastly, Vitalik, any suggestions for ideas?
Suggestions for ideas. I think another thing that's just important from a technical point of view is just like the basic infrastructure that we need for any kind of crypto social thing to work at all. Like Ethereum logins, that's something that the Foundation recently pushed out an RFP for, and that's there was lots of ideas there to kind of do some work around. The concept of attestations, so just the concept that like you can detect, what kinds of properties some account has, like does it have some ETH balance? Does it have a proof of humanity? Does it have a Pope token? Does it have like some other kinds of record behind it? Maybe even making some kind of better system for attestations, incorporating that in some way. Just like this basic, also better smart contract wallets, like just all of this infrastructure that's like not connected to very specific ideas for social things, but that has to exist in order for all of this stuff to be built on top in the first place.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank all three of you for giving us your time today. I mean, from just our perspective, it is incredible that we're able to kind of talk about all these ideas and talk it to a group of people that are going to eventually build it, and the results of which we're going to see in a few years from now. And just the fact that we can have these types of conversations in this community and just have people all of you involved is truly incredible from the global side and just from our side. So we really appreciate your time. And it's just another endorsement from our side to kind of make this decentralized movement a lot more possible and distribute it. So thanks again to everybody, and really appreciate you taking the time and through all these different time zones everybody's in. Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, so I hope you also enjoyed a lot of the amazing topics of discussion. I know we didn't get to cover all the questions from our speakers, or from the audience, but for some of the other ones, we'll be able to relay them later on to our speakers. So we have a few more things to go. We primarily just want to announce the prizes for everybody out there. So we'll kind of quickly jump into that. I want to specifically thank our partners for this event. I want to kind of give a shout out to Filecoin Foundation and IPFS for being our presenting partners. And then I want to say thank you to Ceramic, Polygon, Fluence, The Graph, Pillar, and Textile for being our pillar sponsors. And then for our provider sponsors, I want to give a shout out to Audius, Superfluid, Chainlink, Zora, Covalent, LivePeer, Unlock Protocol, Aave, and Unstoppable Domains. And lastly, we also have a few supporting sponsors who are here to help and support these types of events and grow the community. And that I want to give a shout out to IPFS Main, Lemnis Cap, BitsCrunch, Secured Finance, and ENS. So we talked about $175,000 in prizes, and there's so many things that are happening from all of our sponsors. So we wanted to quickly talk about what the prizes are. And what we've done is we've asked a lot of our sponsors to create some videos that they get to play and introduce themselves and talk about who they are, as well as what they're excited to do as part of this event. So before we jump into those specific videos, we asked Protocol Labs to create a 2-minute video on who they are and how they're excited to be involved in HackFS. So I'll let them talk about this event.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be part of HackFS and have the chance to work with the so many hackers that have applied to today's event. My name is Vuk and I'm part of the IPFS and Filecoin ecosystem team. So In the last 12 months, we have seen an explosion of usage both on IPFS and Filecoin. IPFS is being used by basically all the NFTs out there, and most of the platforms that are interacting with the NFTs are using IPFS in a way or another. The nicest thing of all is that probably you have used IPFS without noticing that. So for example, you went to OpenSea in the background either called the gateway or it called IPFS directly. And the thing is that we want to have the transition to Web3 exactly in that way without you noticing it. And that's why today we are launching Web3.storage with a mission to give the same transition experience also to developers, allowing them to interact with a JavaScript library and from there basically interact with Filecoin and IPFS directly. Other than Web3.storage, you have also tools that you could possibly find useful during the hackathon, like NFT.storage, that allows you to upload and create your NFTs through a web UI or calling a API directly. You have Slate as well, which has a very nice API that you can use to actually try to create a better version of a social network, maybe not focused on user engagement, but focused on user happiness. So that was from IPFS and Filecoin. Hope that you find our tools useful, and we're going to be there to support you during the hackathon.
Awesome. And next up, we have all the prizes that you've all been waiting for. So I want to jump first into talking about the Filecoin and the IPFS prizes and what you can win and how.
So prizes from IPFS and Filecoin, there are 50,000 USD in fill that are going to be split between the top 5 winners. And there are 50,000 USD in fill that are going to be split between the apps that are using Web3.storage.
So to highlight, so Filecoin and IPS will be giving out $60,000 in total prizes denominated in Filecoin tokens. So they have 5 grand prizes of $10,000. Sorry, it's 100,000, 5, not 60, 100. 5 prizes for $10,000 in Filecoin tokens for the top 5 projects that are selected by the protocol lab leads. And then there's going to be a prize pool of $50,000 in Filecoin awarded to all the projects that are using Web3.storage or SURA.tech or Slate.host. That'll be split evenly across every team that uses those protocols or APIs. Then we have Ceramic, and we'll talk about what Ceramic is giving as a prize.
Hey all, Danny from Ceramic Network, the sovereign data network for Web3 applications. We let you easily manage all your applications data on top of IPFS. That's in dynamic content streams, so any mutable data stored on a local first, super fast and scalable P2P network with flexible data models, so you can format data however you want, model any kind of data you need, all authenticated by decentralized identities, which can be controlled from the keys already in your user experience. And so all that's built in. What can you do with that? Basically all the features that you need to really bring Web3 applications to life: aggregated identity and reputation, social infrastructure, user-generated content, chat, comments, things like that, private user data storage to sync between wallets, keys, devices, even apps, metadata, schema registries, and just other data that you want in the public domain. Lots of prizes for HackFS. Pool prize, $3,000 will be split amongst all qualifying projects. Best use of Ceramic or IDX. See our blog post for what we're looking for there. Best new tooling or pattern that other devs can use. This can be a tutorial, it can be new tools, or it can just be an open source pattern that others can learn from. And then best use of Ceramic alongside other sponsors. Lots of ideas here. Come chat with us about what you're thinking. To get started, some links here, docs, tutorials in our blog, a sample app, self-ID, and of course our community, and we'll be in the sponsors channel during the entire hackathon. Good luck, happy hacking, and can't wait to see what you build.
Amazing. And just to summarize the Ceramic prizes, they're giving $3,000 in pool prizes, which is going to be distributed evenly across all teams. And the best use of Ceramic of IDX gets $2,500. The best tooling or a pattern for developers to use IDX or Ceramic will get $1,000 as well. And the best use of Ceramic alongside any other sponsor integration is also going to receive $1,000. Next up, we have Textile, and we'll have Andrew from Textile talk about their prizes.
Hello, HackFS. I'm with Textile, obviously. We're building a really cool bridge for you to store data on Filecoin from Near, Polygon, or Ethereum. Permissionless, no API keys, no accounts. You'll love it. Super easy to use. Look at the documentation. We have $8,000 in prizes for using this bridge, 4,000 divided among all projects using it, and two first place prizes, $2,000 for best use of the bridge with Near, and $2,000 for best use of the bridge with Polygon. Good luck. Can't wait to see what you build.
Thanks for that amazingly incredible creative video, Andrew. Just to summarize Textile's prizes, we have $2,000 for the best use of the Near Filecoin bridge, $2,000 eligible for the best use of Polygon and Filecoin bridge. And all Filecoin bridge users, whether it's Near, Ether, Polygon, will manage a shared pool prize of $4,000. Next up, we have Polygon. We'll have Muskan from Polygon talk about their prizes.
Hey everyone, hi, this is Muskan. I lead developer relations at Polygon. So excited to be part of HackFS. I'll quickly cover about Polygon a bit. So Polygon is a well-structured, easy-to-use scaling platform. So basically, it's a scaling aggregator. So like whatever scaling solutions exist out there, you'll be able to find everything on one platform, that is a Polygon. As of now, Polygon POS chain is live, and like there are like more than 500 plus applications which are being developed on the Polygon POS chain, and it's pretty simple to use and implement dapps on a Polygon POS chain. That's all about Polygon and about bounties. So we are offering 4 tracks this time. First is best implementation of given ideas on Polygon. So we have shared a couple of ideas in our prizes. If you implement one of them, you'll be able to win this prize. Next is best DeFi project in Polygon. Third is best NFT project in Polygon, and fourth is open track. So that's all about our prizes.
And just to summarize the Polygon prizes, so the best implementation of Polygon's listed ideas is eligible for $2,000. The best DeFi project on Polygon that also utilizes IPFS or Filecoin is eligible for $3,000. And the best NFT and gaming project on Polygon is eligible for $2,000 as well. And there's also an open track for $2,000 that is up to the discretion of the Polygon team to decide the winners for. Next up, we have Pillar, and we'll learn about the Pillar prizes from Michael.
I'm Michael, CEO of Pillar, a community-run smart wallet. We've brought to you Ethersport SDK, a framework for dApp developers to build seamless user experience over multiple EVM-compatible chains. Our prizes are split between USDC and Pillar tokens. First prize is worth $3,000 US, second prize $2,000, third prize is worth $1,000. We've also contributed $1,000 worth of Pillar tokens to the pool. We've got a link to our SDK, example code, website, and a playground where you can test your ideas before even coding. We've also got a link to our audit back and census diligence. Looking forward to seeing you build over the coming event. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So to summarize Pillar prizes, the first prize will get $3,000 worth of USD denominated in USDC and Pillar tokens. The second prize winner will get $2,000 in USD, and the third prize will get $1,000 for the best use of Pillar integrations. And then we have Fluence, and we'll see what the prizes that they have to offer.
Hello, hackers. We at Fluence Labs are working on a peer-to-peer application platform which allows to avoid proprietary cloud providers and centralized backends. Fluence is a missing decentralized compute layer for Web3 that everyone is waiting for. It is built on top of IPFS and compatible with many Web3 protocols. Prizes that we have today are all about adding compute to your decentralized data. Combine Fluence with IPLD, IPNS, use Fluence with ceramic or textile, and grab your bounty. Find more details in our GitHub and see you in our Discord channel.
Amazing. I'm always just impressed by the amount of creativity that goes into all of our videos. So I'm super excited to be seeing all these again. So to summarize the Fluence prizes, the best use of ceramics or IDX will, oh, sorry, I think we messed up. We'll change this later on. Moving on to the graph. So the graph is giving out a few prizes as well. So the graph will award $1,500 in DAI for the best use of subgraphs from the sponsors Explorer. They will also award 3 prizes to the best new subgraphs that are created on the Graph Explorer with $1,000 each per team. Then we have Covalent. Covalent will be distributing a total of 3,000 USDT divided evenly between all teams that are going to use the Covalent API for their projects. Then we have Superfluid, and Superfluid will be doing a pool prize of 4,000 DAI divided evenly between the teams that integrate Superfluid into their submissions in a meaningful way. Next, we have LivePeer, and LivePeer will also be doing a $4,000 pool prize of LPT or USDC tokens divided evenly between all teams that integrate LivePeer. Then we have Audius, and Audius will be awarding 4K divided evenly between teams that use the Audius protocol or the API in any of their submissions. Then we have Chainlink, and Chainlink will be doing $5,000 in pool prizes, and this amount will be evenly divided between all projects that use the Chainlink Oracle in their protocol or their submission in some way. Then we have Unlock, and Unlock will be doing a pool prize of $4,000 denominated in UDT tokens, which will be split evenly amongst all submitted projects that use the Unlock protocol. Then we have ENS, and ENS will be giving $150 USD in ETH to the 5 best projects that make the most interesting use of ENS into their submission. Then we have Aave, and Aave will be giving $4,000 in the pool prize to all teams that use the Aave protocol or any Aave product on mainnet, Ethereum, or on Polygon, and this will be divided evenly between all teams that qualify. Then we have Zora, and Zora will be giving $4,000 divided evenly between all teams that use Zora and Malveaway for their submission. To just remind everybody, it's totally fine if you didn't get to see or remember all the descriptions here. All the prizes are available for you to catch up on by heading over to fs.ethglobal.com/prizes, and you can go into the doc that has all the details and the submission criteria and the breakdown of everything that you can win from all of our sponsors. And before we end this thing, we have one last video that we wanted to share talking about one prize. And it's a really important moment for us because a year ago when we did the very first HackFS, we didn't know how things would go because we just wanted to try something entirely brand new and adjacent but complementary to what we've been doing before as ETHGlobal. And we had a submission from the hackathon participant called Secure Finance. Secure Finance made a really interesting protocol as part of their month-long effort into working on the hackathon. After the event, they continued to build Secure Finance and turn it into a much, much bigger project. And come around 12 months and today, it is so exciting for us to see that Secure Finance is actually coming back as a sponsor. They're going to help not only get others into this ecosystem, but also really kind of give back to the community. And we asked them to talk about their prize and their experience. And this is what they have to say. So I'll let the Secure Finance team talk about their video and we can see from here.
Hi, I'm Secure Finance co-founder and CEO Masa. We make decentralized finance protocol using Ethereum and P2P. Last year, I joined HackFS alone and met many talented hackers to form a dream team. And we spent the whole summer remotely building Secure Finance. We got awarded as the best DeFi project from Protocol Labs and also as the best ETH 2.0 and P2P project from Ethereum Foundation. After that, we were invited to join the Filecoin Accelerator program powered by Tachyon. During the program, we incorporated and grew up from a hackathon project to an investor-ready startup company. This week, we just announced the $4 million seed fundraising. And I'm excited to support this event. Just 1 year ago, we were just hackers like you, but HackFS changed everything. This is a life-changing event, so please enjoy hacking.
Hi, my name is Bach. I'm a co-founder at Secure Finance. For us, HackFS has been an incredible event where we formed our core team. Our hackathon project became a venture-backed business, which is expanding now on a daily basis. I'm grateful to ETHGlobal and Protocol Labs teams for making HackFS, because that's a huge opportunity for everybody to meet like-minded builders who are obsessed with solving really hard problems. Apart from us, many other teams successfully running their companies, which also started during ETHGlobal hackathons. Our team is extremely excited to support you during the hackathon. I hope you will enjoy this year's HackFS, and I wish you all the best.
Hello guys, I'm Timo, Community Lead at Secure Finance. We are very excited to see you this year. This is a very nice place that you can make your dream come true. We are also building developers community. Please reach out to me on Twitter and enjoy hacking.
That was such an awesome thing to see and hear. There's so many people that got to continue building their projects and turn this into careers, and just being able to see that in action and see everything, how things have evolved, is just amazing for us. And I only wish for more of these scenarios to happen in the future. So hopefully we'll see a lot more from HackFS 2021 and all of our future events. But in the meantime, I want to wish everybody happy hacking, and we'll see you all on Discord and also on the team formation session. But looking forward to working closely with all of you for the next 3 weeks. And with that, I want to thank everybody for being here and wish you all the best for the next few weeks. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy some lo-fi beats.